In this lesson, we're going to unhide the chassis and we're going to build this little, there's a platform here and there's a front bumper. Kind of conforms to the shapes we have with the chassis. So this is a good time to go up to Layer Manager. Let's unhide the chassis. Let's hide the blueprints just for a second so you can check your progress, because I think you'll be surprised how far the models come. Let me close this out. And if you zoom out and rotate around, you'll see there's a lot of detail there already, and there's some wheels and things to put along here and some fill-in objects. But it's starting to really look like something. I think the key thing is that we're organizing our workflow, and by doing it in sections, we're kind of keeping the distractions to a minimum. Because even the best modeler, if you have something overwhelming with lots of parts, you could be distracted by the complexity. So that's why I think, you know, having these layers and hiding some of them during the process is a good idea. So let's do this. Let's hide the boiler, unhide the blueprints. Let's hide the lines. And now we have, let's see. Yep, we have the chassis and the blueprint. So we're going to go to chassis level, layer. Click on it, make sure it's active right there. Close out the layer manager. And what we want now is left viewport. Right above here, there's like a little flooring. It's probably like a little metal floor. So what we're going to do is come in here. Let's select this section, F3, so I can see what's going on in the wireframe. Let's Alt and Q, and now we can F3 again so we see what we got. And we have some pieces that are interlocking, but I think just to clean it up and make it feel like, you know, it's built out of many pieces, let's just do this. We'll go to Geometry, Box, Auto Grid. There we go. And let's come in just a little bit. And right here we're going to start. And remember, with Auto Grid, it's going to align the object you drag out, the object you create, to the surface normal of what you're working on. So you see that the manipulator, as I roll around, changes. So each time I would create a new object, it'll align to that normal. So what we want to do really is come here to this flat surface, just drag it out. It could be a little bit off. It's not a big deal, you know. It's not something that's like set in stone. I'm going to nudge that up, and we'll make sure when we're done that it is actually level to everything. But let's just change this size a little bit. We're going to make it a little longer, and maybe not so thick. I'm going to go with 1.5 inches for the thickness, and it needs to be a little wider. So we're going to do that, just like that. It should overhang the frame a little bit, the chassis, and it should be relatively even. Again, not something that has to be exactly perfect, but it should look good. You know, your discretion. And if time isn't an issue, you know, again, I'm assuming that we're having a deadline and we need to get this done pretty quickly. So that looks good. Maybe a little less thickness. Let's go to 0.75, and that's much better. Convert it to an editable poly by right-clicking. Let's select the polygon, and let's go up to the selection, control-click on edge. Let's give it a little chamfer on there. Not too big. That's way too big. Right-click it out, and just go maybe like that. So that's almost 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to say OK. Back out a little bit. We could turn off the wireframe. Okay, so now we have that platform, and when you access those ladders that go up here, this platform will help get to them. And what we're going to do next is go top viewport, and we're going to make a bumper. So what I've seen in the reference, the bumper's kind of just like a little chamfered at the edge. So I'm going to do it with a line just for quickness. So let's do this. We'll start here. Let's turn off Auto Grid. And we're going to start here. Let's come out. Alright, you see that it's renderable, and you know, we don't want it to be, but it's not a big deal. We can change that afterwards. So I'm just going along. I'm going to stop at the midpoint just like that, and then right click to stop the creation process. Let's turn off that line. Turn off enable in render and enable in viewport. I might have to do that one more time. There we go. Okay. And now what we want to do is let's just take this and shift with the move tool and drag it out as a copy. Let's mirror it along the X, just like that. And let's pull it out till we see, there we go. We can see where they kind of join. That looks good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to attach one to the other, just like this. And we'll go to vertex subobject. turn off attach. Let's just select these with a marquee and fuse and weld. And if we wanted to, we could even delete that one. Now we have one big long shape. I think what we want to do also, let's select these. Let's see if we can do this. Fuse them and weld. And let's delete that point. Okay, so that's the profile I think we want for our bumper. Let's go to perspective. F3. Let's just pull this up. It's okay if it intersects that piece a little. Extrude this a little bit. Extrude modifier from the modifier list. Right click to zero that out. And let's go 6 inches and just see how that looks. Push it down a little bit. It's not bad. What I want to do now is exit isolation. Let's just take a look. This blue piece is the bumper, so let's zoom in a little. On the front view, you get a good look at it. So we need more than 6. Let's go 10. See how that looks. Looks better. We'll just pull that down just like that. Let's make it even 12 inches. And then there we go. So that's your bumper. It's not a complicated part. What we're going to do is we're going to grab some of the clamps that we use for the steam lines, and we're going to put 4 of them here, and a little decorative railing that comes across the front. And then we'll add a few like tubes in here that will add some surface detail, and that was on the reference that I'd found, so it's something I plan to do. So let's do this first. Let's go to Create Panel, Geometry. Let's do a tube cap. MVH primitives, tube cap, on grid, auto grid right there. Let's just drag one out. It's aligned to that surface. Pull it out. You release and inset a little bit, just like that. Let's make it 16 segments. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit with the Z key. And let's come over here and right click on tube cap and convert to editable poly. Go to edge, Alt and R for ring selection, Control Shift and E to make a new loop. Let's pull that out a little bit just like that. And now let's do border selection. Marquee the whole thing. We'll get the inner and outer border. And let's just shift drag that border back. There we go. F3 so you can see a little better. We pull it forward. That's how I think it should look. Let's add a smooth modifier. Right out of that modifier list, smooth, auto smooth. Okay. A little segmented, but not bothersome. If you're bothered by segments, we can always either subdivide, or we can come across on top of there on the modifier stack and edit poly, edge, and let's do this. Alt L, Alt R, go to edges, or loops, I'm sorry, loops, flow connect. And that's a quick way to make that have more segments. Now the only thing, if you're going to turbo smooth something like this, sometimes it'll be a little segmented. You can even see it here. It's not a perfect circle, but it's close enough. Even though that function is supposed to be perfect at averaging out the spacing and what the edge loop should do, may not be always perfect, but it's good enough for what we need it for. So I'm just going to pull that forward. Let's grab the border selection. It's still selected. Let's pull it back a little bit. F4 again. Let's go up to the top of the stack. That's good. Smooth modifier one more time, and then I'm going to collapse this down. So let's go to smooth, auto smooth. That's good. I'm going to collapse that, collapse 2. I don't think I'm going to modify that at all. Of course, we're going to take everything we do on one side and do it on the other. So you can either use symmetry or shift drag it as an instance and then mirror. A lot of the parts I've built so far in this lesson are going to need to be copied over to the other side. It's just easier for me to show you what's going on with one side. Make sure we center this kind of to that face. That looks good. Okay, and then in the reference, I believe we have a couple smaller ones right here on each side. So we're going to just come in. We can use the same one, but I think let's just do 2 new ones or 1 new one. On grid, auto grid's on, tube cap. Let's pull it out, inset it. This time we'll make it, let's go 20 or 18 segments. 18 is good. And right click it, convert to editable poly. Zoom in a little. And then we use our move manipulator. We'll just move it and add an edge in the middle. So select an edge, Alt and R to ring select, Control Shift and E adds an edge loop. pull it out a little bit, just like that. Border selection, marquee the whole thing, you get both borders. Let's shift drag that border back a couple times, just like that. Okay. Let's add a smooth to the top of that stack. Auto smooth. Okay, and let's make one here, clone it down. That's 2. As an instance is fine. Let's bring them across to the other side. Just like that. Okay. Make sure they're kind of spaced the same. There we go. And that looks pretty good. So I think one last thing, we'll take this bumper. Let's add an edit poly to the top. Remember your hotkeys can get overridden, so if things don't react properly, just come up here and check or uncheck this little box for the override. What we're going to do is select all edges, Control and A, and we're going to chamfer. And we're going to reduce that value, right click it out. Let's just do a little chamfer just like that. And you'll notice the thing Max does when it chamfers, which is a big gripe with a lot of people, is it makes these triangles. There is a script that you can buy, I think it's maybe 10 euros, so what, $15. It'll quad chamfer all your edges when you do this operation. I haven't tried it myself yet, but I might when we're done with this exercise. So with that said, this looks good. I don't think we need another. Well, that looks good too, but let's stick down to 1 and say okay. Let's click out, F4. And there you go, we have a bumper right there. It's looking pretty good. I think I'm going to continue. Let's unhide all. So let's come over here, unhide all. We'll say no. And actually we need to say yes, so it's not a big deal. Let's go to Layer Manager. And let's unhide the boiler layer. That's where the part that I want to grab is. We can close the Layer Manager. Let's come in and let's get one of these hose clamps that we made earlier. It's in the hardware layer as well, but I'm grabbing it from right here. I'm going to make a copy, not an instance. And we'll pull it to the front. Let's go to left viewport. Okay. It's a bit too far out. We want to align it to the bumper, which is right around here. Let's drag that down right here. And let's right click. Well, actually we don't need to right click. Let's just rotate it. Looks like it's a little at an angle, but it's not a big deal. There's 90. I think it's a little off this way. That fixed it. We had snaps on when we made the moves, so most of these angles that we're dealing with will probably snap back. There we go. And what we want to do is, I'm going to probably thicken this up. I'm going to pull it up a little bit, move it to the center, just position it. It's whatever's to your taste. It's not set in stone. Let's zoom in and grab some vertices. And grab that whole top section. We're going to pull it down here a little bit, just like that. Turbo smooth it again. Okay, it looks good. Let's get it so it's F4. It's on the surface of the bumper, just like that. And what I think it needs, I'm going to go back down to Edit Poly, click the modifier list, hit P. Hit P a few times till you see push listed. I see it right here. Let's use the push. It's just going to add some volume to that. Feels like it should be more substantial. And you see we got a little right here, a little pinching, but I'm going to come back just till that disappears right there. And that looks better. And now what I'm going to do is make 2 on each end. So we have 1 there. I'm going to put 1 here. Okay, F3. I'm going to drag those 2 out. Try to match the spacing that's on the other end. That's okay. Okay, let's hide the blueprints. Go up to Layer Manager. Hide. That's the blueprint layer. Let's come in here now, close that out, and Shift and B. That's for the rear view, or, well, in our case, it's the front. And now we're going to come over here to Shapes, Rectangle. What I'm going to do is turn off Auto Grid. Might be on from before. I'm going to line up with about where that bumper angles back. And I'm just going to pull out a rectangle just like this. Go to the other part where it angles back, just like that. I'm going to add some corner radius. As we remember in earlier exercises, we have parameters, corner radius. I'm going to just roll that until it has the feel that I want. That looks good. Let's convert to editable spline. And we're going to do this segment. Let's delete this one and this one on both sides. And then let's go to vertex. We'll grab the bottom vert on each end. Let's move it down using the move tool. go to perspective, and this needs to be moved to the front. It's kind of at the middle of the train. So with the move tool, we're just going to drag that right up here. Zoom in a little bit, F3. Let's make it renderable, which is down here. Rendering, enable and render, enable and viewport. We're going to just pull that back a little, just to that diameter, and then let's align it with these little spindles that are holding it in place. And that looks perfect. I mean, that adds a nice bit of detail right there. So with that, I think we're going to pause the lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to make a tube that goes from the boiler down to here, down to this little drivetrain element. And we're going to use some of the techniques we used earlier. So I'm going to pause the video and we'll pick it up later.